Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. I have been having such an incredible time catching up with Sarah, former client, amazing colleague and friend. I am so excited to bring her on the show. Sarah, how are you doing today?
Hi, Carolina. I am wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, we're going to get right into it. I'm so excited to bring you onto the show. We worked together many, many years ago, and you have birthed a book into the world. Now, I'm obsessed with helping people write books. I think so many people have books inside of them and they die with them inside of them. I remember how much despair I felt when I used to drink, and I knew I wanted to write a book, but it just wasn't coming out and I wasn't writing it. And so the fact that I finally got that out there is one achievement, but to help other people to know that that's their mission in life, that's their purpose, like, oh my gosh, it's so special. So you just published your first book, Swaddled. I'm holding it in my hand right now. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I can't wait to have this conversation and really pull apart how your orientation and your coaching and mentorship was able to remind me. For me, it was a reminder. And we'll come to some of those details, I'm sure. Years back, I knew that I wanted to and was here, I think, partially to write a book to reach people who need the messages they're in. And it was through working with you that I was gently reminded, gently and excitedly reminded of that.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. That goes right into my first question. So some people, don't know that they want to write a book until they're much older and they have this like moment, but some people know when they're younger as well. So like, how long did you know you wanted to write a book?
Yes, so this is a pretty easy response for me. And it is stated in the dedication of my book, which is to my father, who also happened to be a writer. And my name is Elizabeth Sarah. And as I describe, it is such because he always told me that my name is Elizabeth Sarah, not Sarah Elizabeth, because it would look better on a book cover one day. And so I've always gone by Sarah, but somewhere in the back of my head was that knowledge, right? So there's probably a lot of psychology around saying something that big to a young girl. It'll look better
Good
on the
father.
book cover one day, no pressure. And so I always had that, and it was somewhat of a joking remark for a while. But as I grew up, right, and life happened, maybe every couple of years it would pop to mind, oh, well, what am I going to write about? I did a lot of writing in college as a philosophy major. And so again, on an every couple years cadence, I would kind of tease that question. And then truly, it was in my time working with you, and you'll need to remind me of the name of this exercise, but it was sort of one of the very first onboarding exercises. It was a few pages with lots of questions that had lots of responses that we could circle. And in doing so, in encircling that, I want to write a book. It was this epiphany that I think had been, buried.
Yeah.
It was an initiative that had been buried over the years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that because I think our childhood selves and what a great dad you had to already embed that into your mind, instead of the other way around, right? It's so special to like have that grandeur built into us that yes, you can achieve these amazing things. It's so interesting how we go back to sometimes those childhood dreams, where we grew up at one point, we faced reality, we got the jobs, we, settled down, all this stuff. And I think especially when you evaluate alcohol, it's like, no, well, what do I really want to do on this one time on this planet? And what's really matters to me? And unearthing that back too is, I think, really, really special. So I'm curious, how did, reevaluating your relationship with alcohol help you actually take something that was the figment of a dream in your mind and execute it into a real life book, which I can't wait to get into the topic matter.
Yes, it still feels a little surreal, but I will say to you that my recollection of that exercise and that knowing is extremely vivid. I describe it to others, and I remember describing it to you almost as a veil being lifted. And I think, not to get too psychology talk on us, but it it's a set of protection mechanisms, right? That keep us smaller. And I think my setting aside of alcohol allowed that clarity, that lifting of the veil, so that I could remember. As you said, luckily for me, it was a reminder of my highest and best capacities and really self. And it was an aha moment. I remember where I was.
Oh, you're giving me chills. Where were you?
I was up north in Wisconsin, which is where we escaped in the early part of the pandemic. And so my timeline with my reevaluation of alcohol and my connection with you was just prior to everything going haywire around the pandemic. So I had already made that commitment, let's say in February. And then it was late March, early April of 2020 that that all happened. Um, and we were up north in Wisconsin. We escaped to a vacation home to sort of isolate. And I have the fondest recollections of waking up early in the morning before the household to watch your program's daily learning. I'm a student, right? Like I am a student in my heart and soul. And so I looked forward to understanding the science, understanding the why, so that I could more easily implement. And so that's where I was when I was going through the program. And it was right out of that that we started working together, and during which those clarity exercises happened. And so while I'm thinking of this, I'm just going to say it out loud. That was 5 years ago. And one of the many concepts that you speak of that I recall often is the idea of the passage of time and how daunting any project can be, in the sense that, oh, that's going to take some time, right? That's not going to be done in 3 weeks, 6 months, possibly even a year. And so, as this journey to publication happened and represented a lot of pivots, and I'll just say it, falls along the way, you were somewhere back here saying what you say so eloquently: the time is going to pass anyway, right? So had I hoped it would happen in fewer than 5 years? Yes. But was it perfectly timed the way it did happen? And when it did come to fruition? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Mine took me 4 years. You're preaching to the choir, right? It's the
So
same
I'm just a
thing.
little on the slow ski scale. Good.
Okay, so I love how it came onto you. I'm just gonna go chronological in your story right now. So you get
Yeah.
this like huge, like, yes, I have to do this feeling. Um, but when you start working on your baby, your creative baby, lots of resistance comes up. Lots, lots, lots. And I'm not sure if you've read the book War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Yes.
Wait, Art of, yeah. I was like, War of Art, Art of War? No, the first one.
Yeah.
But he has this famous quote about how when you're working on something that is your soul's purpose, you're going to have the most resistance towards. And it either can be resistance of actually, sitting down and having the discipline to type things, that's really hard. And even very prolific writers have a hard time getting their butt into a chair and writing. But also the bigger concept of large of like, this movement I'm building, this story I'm writing, that can also be daunting. Like, will I get it perfect? Am I ready to write it right now? Do I need to marinate it on it more? So how did the writing process go for you actually? How did you get yourself to write? And especially when you didn't feel like writing, what did that look like?
Right. The short answer is that I found a community. So I had a fabulous experience with your community, meeting, reaching, sustaining a goal of mine. And so I found another community, this time a writing community. And so your reference to, I'll just translate to imposter, syndrome is part of that for me. Resistance for me comes from the fear of failure. Um, a lot of us like to succeed. And so that fear of not knowing exactly how I was going to succeed was real, but it was combated through that community that provided me with structure. I'm a structure gal day in and day out. And if I can have a plan and if I can ingest instruction and guidance and execute on that in a regular and repeated way, that feels good to me. So, your question around how did I get over not wanting to write on any given day? I had an editor to whom I owed 20 pages every couple of weeks, right? And so accountability toward a public goal helped with that. And then there is one thing that I will call out that this community leader proffered at a conference in terms of, and this gets at worthiness, right? Um, am I a writer? Who am I to think that I might have the capability to write a book? By definition, a writer is someone who writes. And so I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. I'm going to take that. And I literally came up with a short little ditty that I would stick in my pocket, sort of as a token or a talisman. And for me, with my subject matter, I wrote to myself, I am a worthy writer. I am a mighty mama. And the world needs my truths. And I would literally carry that with me
Mm.
and remind myself of it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so glad you touched on those things. That's what helped me so much too. Take something that's like, oh, that'd be nice to work on one day and actually get it out there and happening. And, as we speak this week, I just got 3 book proposals from people in my thought leader mastermind because we're doing the same thing. We're writing book proposals and getting that out there. And it's like you could tool around on that forever. You could almost never write one. You could just be like,
Yeah.
oh, it's something I wish I had. But when you have that external accountability of like, hey, I'm going to send it to someone, I'm going to get it reviewed, I'm going to get pushed it up on the, track of progress, it makes such a big difference. And I definitely recommend that. There's so many like avenues. There's writers memberships, meetups,
Right.
workshops, editors, all these different kinds of things. The Thought Leader Mastermind's amazing too if you want to do a movement around it. But when you
Yes.
make it public like that and you have that external accountability about it, you're just forced to do it. Like a writer with a book deal who has to turn in pages, they're not gonna get stuck in that, oh, I don't feel like writing phase. Yeah, they feel it, but then, tough luck.
But also you're contractually obligated. Right. I think the other big piece, and I imagine that you grappled with this as well, letting go of perfection. If we can prioritize excellence over perfection and accept, some of us are type A, that it ain't going to be perfect in the beginning. And filling the blank page is one thing, and that for sure is and can be difficult. Editing, I thought was going to be easy peasy. Not so much, but that is your known opportunity to improve, not make perfect. Part of my journey was that about a year and a half into it, Carolina, I completely pivoted. I started writing this book as a novel,
Mm.
and it worked up until about 120 pages. And then I hit a brick wall. And that was because I'm not a novelist, and that's okay. But I couldn't conjure additional ideas to bring this thing across. And so, as a part of that community at another conference, another clarity exercise, I had this epiphany around if my goal with the book was to provide support for mothers, that I was probably better able to do that in telling true stories. And so this is just a point around open-mindedness to pivoting in a creative process, because we have visions for how life is going to go. And I don't know what percentage of the time it goes accordingly, probably not a very high percentage. And so then we get to have the courage to pivot. So
Yes.
once I did that, it happened very quickly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so amazed by that. And I want to get now into the subject matter of this beautiful book. So tell us about it. What is it about? What do you cover? What is the bigger movement that you're trying to spread, the message that you want out there?
Yeah. When I became a mother for the first time, I realized quickly that the story we're told about blissful perfection really leaves out so much of the truth. In my estimation, and I know that a lot of women agree, the journey of motherhood is really one of unbecoming and becoming. So, unbecoming who we once were, and becoming who we are now, or some might say who we're meant to be. And I think there exists at least for me, there existed a pretty big gap between expectation that is created by greeting cards, social media, right? Movies, Netflix series, and then the reality of doing a new job that you haven't received any training for. And that can feel overwhelming, and it can feel lonely. Lonely, especially when one is not willing to reveal imperfection, right? And so I think generally it's often overlooked that when a baby is born, so too is a mother born. There is a term that I actually was unfamiliar with. It is matrescence. And we all know about adolescence, right? That period of time in which we're transforming from a child to an adult. Well, I was smitten to discover that there is a term for this uncomfortable at times phenomenon of becoming a mother, that unbecoming, that unraveling, and then the becoming and the knitting together of your past and current and future selves matrescence. And it's sort of anthropology's term for that journey. But I was really heartened to know that it's called something and that people have studied it, but still, it's not talked about all that much. So at the same time, the baby is born, the mother is born, and both of them need to be swaddled. Hence the title of the book and that idea that in the same way the security of a swaddle calms and comforts the baby, the mother also requires embrace. And that embrace can look like someone else telling their true story without shame, without comparison. You know, there are so many rather ugly emotions that surface in motherhood: self-criticism, shame, the inclination that many of us have toward comparison, right? So
Mhm.
I'll just wrap this by saying that my goal in curating this collection of 12 real women's stories was to send three concise messages to mothers. One, you're not alone. Two, you are the perfect mother for your baby, parenthetically, regardless of how everyone else is doing it, right? And then third and lastly, your life will come back to you, albeit bigger and better. You know, if someone had just said those words to me, that your life is going to come back to you, I could have avoided some pretty dark days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you documented, it was probably maybe the first 6 months or a year of your first son's, life and how you came into motherhood. It was so visceral. Like the fact that you remember every little detail too, because how old is your son now?
Oh, this is scary. He's 22.
Yeah,
So
well, amazing memory.
it has been that long. Well, not quite that long. I describe it as after or upon coming out of the haze, you know, that I was in for maybe 9 or 12 months. From that point, I really had a strong calling to help others. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. So I do feel fortunate that a lot of those memories and the specifics came back to me.
Yeah, yeah. And so, that experience of being a brand new mom and, I don't know, my sister has three kids and she just seems like such a natural at it. I'm sure her first was, a lot of learning the ropes and things like that, but well, she didn't raise me, but she was older when I was born. So, some people have babysit, some people watch kids or have kids. I'm the baby in the family. Like I've only watched maybe my sister's babies, but growing up, it wasn't something that was so normal and natural. I think you mentioned the same thing that you never even held a baby until you had a baby. So for some women, it is a completely foreign thing if they hadn't been in nanny care or they didn't babysit a lot or something like that to have a child. To have a child on your own and you're the main caregiver is always going to be a completely different experience. So was that
Yeah.
the most shocking part of it for you? Like this just the whiplash at the very get-go and it like smoothed out, or has it been like whiplash after whiplash? And then when did you refine yourself again? As you said, your third message is that you will find yourself. Did that
Yeah.
take 22 years, or was there some point of it where it was like, oh, I'm back?
Right. I love all of those questions. I'll try to hit each of them. Your comment around your perception of your sister being a natural is so sweet, and she probably is. What I realized about myself, and I'm comfortable now admitting, is that at least with my first, I was not a natural caregiver of an infant. The baby part scared me. I mean, to me, it was a mission to keep this blessing that was delivered to me alive. And I was literally scared that I was not going to be able to successfully do that. I think a lot of people harbor um, that fear, and there's probably a scale of healthy to pathological on that fear scale. And again, I now am comfortable admitting that with my subsequent children. I have three. I became more comfortable based on experience. And by the third, I was a markedly different early mother. I myself had grown quite a bit, and some of my nerves had calmed, again, probably based on experience. But I now am not ashamed to say that even now, probably infancy would not be my favorite stage. Um, I will go on record saying that I believe that I've been a good mother, but um, it was not as chaotic ever as it was with that going from 0 to 1. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it from a numbers standpoint, the math doesn't make sense that you add 1 and then you add for a total of 3 and that it's not chaos. But I think with anything in life, when you have had some exposure and some experience of however you determine success, a lack of overt failure at some points, it feels better. And so, in terms of when I refound myself, I would say it didn't happen all at once. I decided when my first was only less than a year old. So at some point, maybe 9 or 10 months, I felt okay enough to make the decision that I'm going to have another one. I mean, that floored my husband. Um, so that was maybe stage one. And then once I had the second, um, we made some pretty big life changes. We moved from the city to the suburbs, and I waited 4 years between numbers 2 and 3. And I grew a lot and did a lot of self reflection and introspection during that time. And that's why my reference to being a different mother by number 3 was what it was.
Yeah, yeah. And the hardship of it, the I think it's like the expectation, you say this so well in your book, the expectation of what it's supposed to be and what it really feels like can be so wildly different. And that makes you then feel like you're wrong somehow, and it can bring shame
Right.
and all those kinds of feelings. So usually in our society these days, it's glossed over with a glass of wine, right? Hanging out with some
Yeah.
moms and like just having some wine and kind of commiserating together in that. How do you feel like mommy juice culture almost preys on almost the most vulnerable, not the most vulnerable people in society, right? Because we're strong and amazing women, but at a very vulnerable time in our lives when we need so much more support, we need so much more tools and things to heal and to grow and to all that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that mommy juice culture?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking because how I feel about it now is very different from how I perceived it at the time. It's not, I have to believe it's not new. Um, what saved me, what helped me come back to myself was a new mothers group. At the time, it was an in-person group. I think a lot are virtual these days, but I write in the book about how that community and that sisterhood saved me because maybe it was because these were strangers to begin with that we were all able to sort of show up, take off our masks of perfection, things that I wasn't able to admit to my best friends, I could admit to these new people. So we all bonded over this experience of new motherhood. But I write in the book about how yes, we would sit in the session, but then we would eventually get together outside of school, right? And we would go have a glass of wine, or we would go to someone's house and we would each bring a bottle. And at the time, I did not have the orientation that I have now. So I did not at that time see it as sad or weak or like a shortcut, right? To facing what maybe should have been discussed as opposed to stuffed. Um, Today, I try to be gentle on myself in my reflection back. Um, with my first couple and early on, it wasn't that I was depending on alcohol to get through it. But what I see now is the almost coming together of two pastimes that seem in conflict to me now, meaning women are wanting to convene to support each other, and they're bringing a bottle with to do that. And so my own experience with putting the bottle aside was one of clarity and an unveiling of confidence in who I was. And my current belief is that alcohol by some is used to sort of turn off or numb the discomfort with reality sometimes. And I'm much better at sitting in discomfort now, naming it, and finding maybe not an immediate solution, but something other than a numbing agent to get through it. I was thinking earlier today in anticipation of this discussion is maybe it wasn't when the boys were infants, but I have a recollection, and this does bring me angst. And I've forgiven myself, but still, it's like one of those cringy moments. It was grade school for my oldest, who is a natural at math, but it was that horrible period of rote memorization with what they call math facts. And anyway, doing his homework was just painful, not because he wasn't a dedicated, responsible student, but because as he got older, guess who wasn't able to actually help? Like, so we would go to the dining room table. Come on, bring your stuff, bring your book, bring the calculator, bring everything. And what would I show up with? A glass of wine. And now I look back, and again, with compassion for who I was then, and the lack of other tools that I had, I forgive myself, but that to me, that's pretty bad. And I hope he doesn't remember that as I was getting all worked up, that I had the glass of wine sitting there.
Yeah. And it's just so great to speak to it too, because, we've all been part of drinking culture, but I think what's
Yeah,
happening too is this like real I think it's helping actually right now with the alcohol-free movement, the sober curious movement. Like I can't speak to every social circle obviously out there, but for I think in the early 2000s, 2010s, even like right before the pandemic, the force of that mommy juice culture was so strong that, that you
was.
felt like if you weren't with those people and doing what they're doing, that you had no support outside of that, right? It's like either we're all drinking or there's nothing else to it. And almost that kind of recognition that this is so hard and then, we know the science of alcohol now, so we know how much harder it becomes when you're also ingesting that too. And then just more stress and more
Yeah,
chaos in the body that's going on too. So it's just so great now that we have this movement that's, giving people more consciousness. And I think that's what you're doing with your book too, is like, hey, this is hard, but we're not going to shove it under a rug or we're not going to gloss over it with a glass of wine. We're going to talk about it. Like I'm even going to go back 22 years to tell you how hard it was in, the infancy
right.
stage and stuff. And some of the stories that are shared in this book, like a woman having a child with clubfoot and the infertility journey and just so many different stories that you share here are not necessarily the horror stories of motherhood, but like that deep, deep feeling of like, oh my gosh, if my story isn't this perfect fairy tale story,
Yeah,
which is almost like what we have to pretend to society, right? Everything's always okay,
totally,
great, then
totally.
I did something wrong or I'm bad or anything like that. And so, I don't even have children yet, and I felt so loved and supported by this book. So thank you so
Aw.
much for writing it and putting it together. And I'm just curious, like, what's next for you? Like, how do you want to spread this message to the world? What would that look like?
Yeah, I want to get this book and these stories into as many hands as I can. Like you said, you can't know every social circle relative to alcohol use. I can't know every woman's circumstance, but my hope in the collection is that both women who are anticipating being mothers, such as yourself, women who are in the throes of it, and those of us who are a few years off and reflecting back will feel that embrace and that support and love. And so I hope to take the book and make it available locally for me. I remember your description of the feeling of seeing your book in a store. There's something, Amazon is great. We all love, or a lot of us love Amazon. But there's something different about walking into a bookstore or a library. I want this book to be accessible for all. I have visions of hospital gift shops, of baby boutiques, of the call to action that while you're gifting the new baby, who hasn't really done anything yet to be here, by the way, um, please gift and support the new mother. And so while I can't know everyone's circumstance, my hope is that this set of stories will allow really any reader to see herself, at least in one or a couple of the stories.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
amazing. I can't wait to see it in my hospital gift store. That's where we're going for sure. And
Yes.
Sarah, just one more question for you. What would you tell anyone listening to this episode, aspiring writer, they have a book idea in their mind, it took you 5 years to write, but here we have it. The time does not matter. And that's what, like you said at the
Right.
beginning, a long-term project is not a 3-week thing. Like you have to dedicate long-term commitment and have that resiliency to follow a project through. And that's why I know that every author and everyone who's been through this process has built a lot of that resistance and a lot of that resiliency. So, what's your advice for a becoming author?
Yes, I want to be sure to appropriately attribute this concept. I'm quite sure that it's Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic, and you can probably confirm this. The idea or the concept that if you have something big that you want to aspire to. Some of us wait around and we look for and ask for a sign. And her suggestion is that the idea itself is the sign. So I want to extend her messaging to anyone who has even an inkling of something grandiose that they would love to put into this world. If you had the idea, I believe that that is your sign. And so take it as such. And I also think that we are all here for very specific and big reasons. And so our challenge, I feel like, is to overcome our fear, have the fear, name it, hold it, but do the thing anyway. And my experience has been that if you take a baby step, the next step will be revealed to you. In fact, I recall your talking about that. Even if you don't know what a particular step is going to translate to down the road, do it anyway. My experience on this whole journey, and it sounds corny and woo woo, but I promise you, it has been my experience that as I have committed, what is the saying? When you commit, providence moves, or I have found it to be so true. When I do what I say I'm going to do, the next step is revealed to me. When I have closed doors that have been around people or processes that were not serving me anymore, the next door opened. So it's just bravery in that, I guess, and know that you are worthy.
Yeah. You know, I've heard that version and I've said that to people too, but as you were sharing that, I almost imagine like, what if you were sitting beside whatever you call God, the universe, the creator, the energy in the sky, and they're like, this is what you're meant to do. You are meant to write this book. Like, this is your grand purpose in life, or among them, right? Among one of
Right.
them. And we just believe that that's what happened just by having the idea, like you said.
Yes.
Like you wouldn't have the idea if that wasn't the big
If
purpose.
it
And I don't know,
wasn't.
like the way you said it made like so much fireworks even go off in my mind of how profound that really is.
Yes. And I know that what you're saying is true in your circle, in your community. I forget the statistic. Is it over 50%? I think it's in the 60s. The number of people who say that they want to write a book.
Yeah,
And so
82.
82.
82.
Okay, that's huge. And
Huge.
so if it were easy, many more people would do it, but we're not here to do easy work. And what I would say to anyone who's listening to this is that you're better than easy. You're listening to Carolina's podcast because you have greatness in your path, and do the thing. And along the way, the support that you need will be revealed. Please do the thing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Sarah, you are birthing so many writers and authors right now. I'm so
I hope
excited for
so.
this episode's impact and ripple effect. So, Swaddled, you can find it on Amazon. I'm sure we can find it on your website. We're going to link there below. Anywhere else we can find you that you'd like to shout out so we can link it in the show notes.
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. My website is Swaddled by Sarah, and I hope to swaddle not only new mothers, but as this movement grows, there are so many caregivers who deserve the same love and compassion that they're giving to babies and many, many more. So thank you for this opportunity, Carolina, and for all of the good that you're putting into the world. It changes people. It allows us to come back to who we really are.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This is such a cool full circle moment for me and seeing something that was planted as a seed 5 years ago and holding it in my hand, like it's so profound.
You're holding mine, I'm holding yours, and I keep this in my important pile of like 5 books that I use during my morning time. And I'm looking at the annotations. I mean, just know that this is a guide not only for setting alcohol aside, however anyone wishes to, but for life. I mean, this is a lifer. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you. I reread it once, my own book, and I was like, oh, I have some like sage advice there on feeling my feelings. Like,
isn't it
who was that
crazy?
person?
Isn't it crazy? This is my last thing. I know we're going long, but in terms of looking back at your own work and realizing how did that come out? I do think that source, however you refer, is working through us. And I would ask, I mean, in a non-religious way, the name of my book is Swaddled. In my head, I had my swaddled squad of guides and angels, and I would ask them to write through me. It works.
This is such a good tip. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
Okay, well, Sarah, I could talk to you forever. We'll close it out now. And
yeah.
just thank you so much for being on the show today, inspiring everyone. And we'll be sure to link up all the websites and the books so people can find it and get their copy and, gift it to a new mom, read it yourself. Like it's going to be incredible.
Thanks, Carolina. It was a precious opportunity.